It's been a favorite town of Douala since morning, with heavy rain fall blocking most of the streets of Douala, making life very, very impracticable, with many workers unable to go to their respective offices today. Good evening, televiewers. You're welcome to this other edition of Prime Hour on My Media Prime. We today are going to be looking at the flood situation in Douala, Cameroon's economic capital. We equally are going to be discussing about the plea made by the chiefs of the Southwest and Northwest regions, some of them who recently met with the Minister of Territorial Administration, Paul Atanganji, asking for assistance from the government to be able to regain their respective policies across the conflict-stricken Southwest and Northwest regions. We also are going to be looking at the call or the communique that came out from the conveners of the All Anglophone General Conference. They have made some proposals to government and the separatist movements in Cameroon. They are calling for them, for the military to go back to their original barracks, also calling on the separatist fighters, commonly called Amber Boys, to drop their weapons. We are going to be discussing this with our panelists who are already seated in the studio. Andrin Atemi-Bako is a Pan-Africanist. He is part of our discussions this evening. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Leo, again for this opportunity. I hope that our views and our opinions are going to count to bring an enabling environment in our country to actually get a headway in the civil conflict and the crisis we are facing in this country and in the continent Africa. I want to thank all the viewers at this very hour watching my Media Prime to stay tuned and see how our inputs will be able to add as our own contribution to a constructive way forward on solving the crisis in Cameroon, especially in the two regions of the Northwest and the Southwest. Thank you, Mr. Leo.
How easy was it for you to get to our studios this evening?
It was quite, as a matter of fact, I would really say that I don't know how I got here, because I just couldn't drive, and then I had to use another means in coming here, and it's almost like I went through the whole of Douala just to get here. So if you ask me how I came here, I can't really tell you exactly the route I used. But it just tells me that what happened today, the rain that fell from last night, from early this morning to towards evening, it has really caused a havoc in the city. Even though some of us were not to be able to watch on television, to see how the flood actually has caused a lot of a movement, has caused deprived people from moving from one place to another. So to actually come to the studio today, Mr. Leo, it wasn't quite easy at all. I made almost about an hour 30 minutes, and I absolutely got lost until I just realized that we're already at your studio. Mm-hmm. Okay,
also with us is Professor Mark Anthony. He equally is a Pan-Africanist and leader of the Pan-African Freedom Movement. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Leo. Good evening to our million viewers out there. Good evening to my fellow panelists. And I want to say I believe that this evening is going to be another evening where our views will make meaning to you. So we ask that you stay glued to your TV as we discuss these issues.
It was also not easy for you to get here today.
Practically not easy, Mr. Leo, because when I left Bonaberry this evening, I thought maybe it was just a swift drive. I will be sincere, when I arrived at the Sable, I discovered that cars were parked on the road. I didn't know what was happening. I had to push forward to come and see. When I came, discovered the whole place was filled with water. I saw some pictures in the morning. I just thought maybe it was inside the quarter. I didn't know it was right like that on the road. I saw, like I'm watching now on the screen, a whole sea in the middle of nowhere just appeared. So I think it was not easy actually arriving here. Not even talk of leaving my house the whole of today in the morning. When I left, I only discovered that I could not cross my quarter because of the
floods. Okay, also with us is Dr. Ako John Ako, who is a political activist. Yeah, I don't know whether it's a Pan-African. Good evening, welcome.
Yeah, the pleasure is mine. And if we are talking Douala this particular evening, the images are shocking, really shocking, because I can remember when President Paul Biya visited Douala in 2017 to launch the foundation stone for the second bridge over River Vuri. His leaving Douala that evening caused another shock to the town of Douala. But this time around, the type of rains and the floods we have seen today, we don't know what the floods are going to come along with. But then we're equally still shocked that it is at the same time some of the places where the government had commissioned some companies to redirect water channels, or otherwise the Frenchman will call it the creation of drains and water system. In some of those quarters where the work has been completed and handed to the government, the floods were even more violent than in areas without one. So it still calls the state of Cameroon to duty, whether those who are charged with executing state projects or government projects are always up to the task, or something is lacking, or that the budget that was fixed for such purposes have been deviated for other personal ends. This is what we cannot answer, because at the time the government was to resolve the problem, and we believe that we should be facing such a crisis in areas where there have been no drainage projects, but in areas where there is, or there are drainage systems, the same situation still continue to disturb the inhabitants of the Douala city. The city mayor of Douala, with a communique signed this evening, giving instruction for those who are living in swampy areas to evacuate their environment. We don't know if it is a way of solving, or without this communique, people will continue living in such environment. Obviously, a lot of those citizens in places like Beseke or around Misoke, and sometime around Carrefour Cité or Carrefour Cité de Palmier, might have left before his communique. How will the government respond to such situation is what we were expecting in the communique, that in the days ahead the government will take measures to redress, because we are talking in Douala, August season, the August month, and the next month, which is September, will be promising very disastrous for the city of Douala. And we know how congested the town of Douala is. It is time that the moral responsibility of those who have been elected to represent the people take adequate decisions to redefine certain projects, and if not, if where such projects have been given and they are supposed to be carried out, we need caution in the execution of such state projects. It is a need and a moral consciousness for all Cameroonians to do what they have been given as duty to serve the nation Cameroon.
Okay, we also are going to be discussing with Tilaris Atia, a PhD fellow. Tilaris, is that the name? The description is it a PhD fellow out there in Turkey?
Yeah, whichever way it goes, Amatia Tilaris.
Okay, we are glad to have you. And your first reaction to the floods situation out here in Douala, Cameroon's economic capital. Something natural?
It was a pleasure. Yeah, it's natural. It's natural. It's expected. I think very big cities in the world are battling with floods year in, year out. In Boston, in Massachusetts, in the United States, in New York, in several other cities in the world, even in Istanbul, in Turkey, cities are battling with floods. Because of the climate change, most cities are overpopulated. Most cities were constructed without imagining that the world's population would increase like it does. And because of issues of pollution, poor human waste management, we have the kind of situation we have today. And the government of Cameroon shares part of the blame, just like the municipal officials and the citizens, because everywhere, year in, year out, government says people should not construct in swampy areas, they should not construct in the slums, they should not construct on protected areas. But nobody heeds to this advice. If you go to Bamenda in Abango, there have been so many landslides, there have been mudslides, but people still keep on staying there. So it's something that is expected. No government in the world can completely manage the kind of floods that we have, because climate change is a global emergency. Everybody is struggling to battle it their own way. And so the citizens have to also make a contribution to see that we fight climate change together. Because the situation in Douala, while we are blaming city officials, we also have to ask ourselves, where these people who constructed houses in the swamps, in the marshes, did they get building permit? This land, do they have land certificates? So if you go that lane, you will see that most of us are enjoying the benevolent illegality that reigns in Cameroon.
Okay, Andrin, who takes the blame here? Tilari says both the municipal authorities and the population, because some of them are still residing where they were asked to live some years back.
Yes, the blame does not only go on. We understand that there is a challenge of climate change, which the world, the global population of the world is actually suffering today. But if you take, for example, like the city in Douala, where we are actually currently speaking on, this drainage in Douala was contracted to Louis Becker. It's a French firm in 2016, for which is I think was the second contract which he won with the Cameroonian government for the drainage in the city of Douala. So that 1.7 billion was to resolve issues like this, whereby if there are proper drainage in Douala, and if those drainage are in such a way that you can carefully clean them up and keep making way for water to pass its way to where it's supposed to go to. So I think that the equally, we know that there are issues like this in other parts of the world. We have seen that in the United States, we have seen that in Spain, we have also seen that in other European countries, and we also seen that in Africa. We understand that these are natural events, but I want to think that in some cases like what we have here in Douala, I would partly hold the government responsible, because a contract was given. Is just like the road construction we have with the Satom, which is an EU company. We saw that the roads were done just about some few years ago, and the roads are already all bad. So at the end of the day, there are some man-made events and there are some natural events. So the one in Douala, I want to believe that is actually a man-made event, because these are situations, these are areas where they have been, the government has contracted it to a company to actually solve this problem. Until today, we still don't have proper drainage in Douala, when the government made a budget of 1.7 billion CFA just to do drainage in Douala. Not only letting the fact alone that it was a French company that took this contract, which we know that if it were Cameroonians themselves that did it, they would do it in the spirit that we favor them. So these are some of the things that we should not globalize it or generalize it that these are natural events. No, this one is a man-made event, like the road construction we find here in the city of Douala, that was constructed by the Satom company. The roads is all fiasco. The roads are all bad.
Okay, the roads are all bad. Professor Mark Anthony, we have, this is not the first year the city of Douala is witnessing this. The government or the municipal authorities fail to do their homework so as to prevent what we are living now.
Mr. Liu, primarily I would want to turn the blame to the citizens first,
okay,
before turning it towards the municipal leaders and the government. Why? Because most of those whom you see living in such areas, they actually know that such places are swampy, but yet they go living inside. One of the reasons why I said I would turn my blame towards the government is because those who sell those lands are and give land certificates are government officials.
Yeah.
And for the municipal councillors and council as a whole, it is their duty to keep the city in order. And in order to arrange such drainages, it is their duty. But if you discover most of the times they don't care, that's not their job. They look at it as if it is a job for the people to do. And when situations like this start happening, it is true, it's natural, but the effects of it, we could put it on them, because they could have regulated it not to arrive this point. I was crossing the Musa Deep Bridge here. That's a new bridge that was just built. It's not long ago. That bridge should have been lifted up, but what happened? It is down.
But the second bridge is lifted.
The second bridge does not stop the effect of the first one. They should lift both bridges up and give space for water to flow freely. As long as that space is not there, it spreads all over. And you look at it, that's a river, or let me say a stream that is in the middle of the city. They are supposed to channel it in a way that it drains water out of the city. But there are no drainages around there. Who is to be blamed? That's the responsibility of the government of Cameroon.
Okay, but we've seen Chinese cities also
Mr. Liu,
we've
that's
seen
right.
American cities.
That's very right. We are not refusing.
But this indicates that there is so much work to be done by the city authorities in Douala.
Yeah, when we cannot blame natural phenomena, meaning if an earthquake hit Douala, there is no human being that will tell you that the earthquake was manipulated by the government. And within what we are saying, if you get to a Carrefour like the Carrefour they call Carrefour Cité des Palmiers, where a bridge was just constructed some few months ago, the dimension of the bridge has not changed, the height of the bridge has not changed, and we are saying that today as it rains, water floods over the same bridge. The height of that road at that point has not changed from the formal one. We cannot be attributing everything to the forces of nature. Then, notwithstanding that we have learned that climate change is real, because some of us too work in environmental issues, that will not explain that Hong Kong and Douala should be placed at the same position, or New York and Douala should be placed at the same strength. If they tell you the environmental consequences of climate change in Hong Kong and maybe New York, there might not be the same environmental situation in Douala. And those authorities within such nations have proper ways of handling them. The authorities in Cameroon, most principally the municipal councils, and as we are talking of decentralization, I would just wish to see with the new mayors and legislative, whatever we call regional representatives that are going to be voted soon, what energy, what techniques they are going to resolve this issue. We cannot be crying over issues again. But I said what bothers me is that where the council has given recommendations and that work has been carried on in those areas were equally flooded, which means some of us have seen this before. When you build a drainage that is meant to carry a quantity of water similar to the sea and you made it to be a gutter, I believe there's a difference between a drainage and a gutter. And when we measure some of those things, you realize that the project was poorly realized. Okay. And more to that, we need to be conscious, and if not, why not sanction the companies and get into it? Okay. You cannot be building a drainage at the same height with a gutter within a small local community to a major one that links so many other streams.
Hilarious, I'm sure the population also should be more careful, because these may just come back tomorrow or next year.
Yes, I think that it has been recurrent. According to data from the Yaoundé City Council, for example, I think we've had about 130 floods in Yaoundé since 1980. I think over the last 3 decades also, we've had about 300 floods in Douala with about 700 deaths. That is why the French government, development agency, the state of Cameroon and others, they invested in building state-of-the-art infrastructure, drainage systems like some of the other panelists have been saying. And we cannot say that this infrastructure has not come to help the situation. But we all agree that even the best of infrastructure, poorly managed, will not yield the intended results. Because we have hardly anywhere in Douala will you go without seeing garbage flooding the gutters. It's an open secret. All the streets in Douala are littered with garbage, plastics, garbage from homes, toilets that are being drained into all of these things. So it is very difficult for every government itself to manage the floods in the cities, in Nimbe, in Douala, in Yaoundé. So there is need for the people to show good faith, because we may imagine that it's because of poverty that some people are constructing where they should not construct. But also, these people, when you go to Abango in Bamenda, for example, you see very beautiful houses, and you ask yourself, can a poor person put up this kind of structure? So it may be that people in government, they claim some of this land, they claim land, they construct houses and put on rent, and because government machinery, what they call it grounds slowly, and it may never even grant. So it gets very difficult to manage the flood. So the population, they have to take upon themselves, because the pain that they go through every day, the sufferings they go through every year in, year out. We saw people losing almost everything that invested in this world. So there is no point in staying where they are. There's need for us to open up. The investors, they should open up the industrial zone that is on the way to Yaoundé. If the industrial zone is extended to that area, I think Douala can be depopulated, because most of those who are in Douala are looking for jobs. If somebody gets unemployed in Bamenda, in Betra or whatever, they are going to Douala or they are going to Yaoundé to look for jobs. So government needs to see how, assisted by the economic operators, to move the industrial zone far off the city of Douala. We have seen cities in the world that have been transferred. Egypt is struggling to transfer its capital. Nigeria did, and others. So we can also transfer our economic capital so as to limit the suffering of the masses, because Douala is a lowland area. So because of the climate change, we expect that flood waters are going to flow into so much, and because infrastructure is weak, because of corruption and also bad faith from the population and the leadership, it gets very difficult to manage the floods. I'm not sure we can manage the floods in the next 30 years. So the population, to avoid dying, to avoid the kind of suffering that they have to look for alternatives.
Okay. Yeah, just to add, because what we are blaming the government, people should not just think that we are here to talk. When you get to Yaoundé, and look at the drainage that have been built over River Fundi, I'm telling you that Cameroonians and even foreigners admire the style.
Yeah, but there's the flood in Yaoundé.
No, we are talking, that is not where the drainage has been built. I mean, it is questionable when there is a drainage in a quarter and the quarter is flooded. Okay. But what has been done already, a level of River Fundi, from Machine Fundi right up to Ala or wheresoever, right up to at the outskirts. Okay. Now we have the road coming from the airport. You realize that there are no floods along that trench. Okay. Which means that if a job is well done, Cameroonians can be served. Okay. And these are the example. I mean, the government delegate at the time, Chimifuna, I believe very strongly that he did an excellent job. And those are some of the people we need to congratulate and even give a very high salute for his services he has rendered.
Okay, we move over to our second topic, which has to do with the call by AGC conveners for the government to open up dialogue with the separatist leaders in Kondingi and those in the diaspora, calling on the military to get back to the barracks and separatist fighters to down their weapons. I will start with you. I want us to look at their release. They say that they are very worried because according to them, there is a clear decline in morals. Is that the situation in which we find ourselves in Cameroon, that morality is completely gone?
Yes, I will agree with that, because it's quite a complex situation to see how a nation such as Cameroon will go into this kind of a disastrous conflict, which is ravaging lives of its own human resources. So I think that it is in the good faith of the government. I think the government should be able to find a means to come to the table with this whoever are the leaders of these ground fighters in those two regions, and see how they can reach a consensus that can harmonize and unite the country, so that Cameroon can forge its way to emergence. So I would think that morality has gone away for so many reasons, because you look at the geography, you look at the psychology of the conflict down there. It makes it so difficult, whereby the common man now becomes the highest target. So the government, if the government wants to protect its own population, I think that the government should be able to find a means and resolve this crisis with whosoever are responsible in dialogue to bring about peace in those two regions, because at the end of the day, it's at the expense of the human resources in Cameroon, and it's killing the economy. So I think that it is not in the favor of the vision of the head of state in this country to allow this conflict to persist. We understand that behind there are some monsters and there are some ghost nations behind, which we are going to be talking about as we proceed in this our discussion, that are behind sponsoring these separatist fighters that are down there. But as I keep saying, that it is still not too late. If the government would take a very huge approach in addressing this matter, it might bring about some resolution for peace to reign in those two regions. Because when this crisis began, the population of, I would say that almost 60 to 70% of the population in those two regions stood behind these Ambazonians, because they felt that it was a revolution that was going to take about 3, 4, 5 months. So they knew that it would not be something that was going to take long. But at one moment, when they started realizing that the leaders themselves, the Ambazonian leaders themselves, began going against each other and started showing the interest of greed and embezzlement, as we saw, the population withdrew back, and this now allow a handful of separatist fighters to find themselves in the middle of the ocean. So I am only saying that any other method the government will want to do that exclude these separatist fighters out of that plan is only going to radicalize them, and it's a common man that is going to suffer the effect of it. So I am calling on the government of Cameroon to find a means. And if we say that Cameroon is one and indivisible, we must find a means where we have to come to the table and settle out our differences. Whatever ghost nations or whatever ghost imperialism are behind this revolution, we can chase them away by actually calling our brothers and our sisters on the table and find a means where we can reach a consensus to build a Cameroon for Cameroonians. I keep saying this because at the end of the day, what Cameroonians are seeking for may not be what they are expecting. It's like the people in the northwest and in the southwest, what they were expecting, that the separatist fighters were going to lead them into an independent state. Finally, at the end of the day, now they are crying and wishing that the separatist fighters never came up. So let us be very careful with the kind of things that we support, because at the end of the day, Cameroonians need to understand the history of their country and understand that the head of state is an individual and its administration is another body. So when we are blaming the Cameroonian government, we must also understand that the individual who is the head of state in Cameroon has a responsibility, and its administration also has a responsibility. So when we merge these things together, we may not see the picture very clearly, because at the end of the day, a bad administration can make a head of state look like a bad man. So let us try to be careful the way we make certain decisions. But I still call on the head of state and its administration, because we have seen that this civil conflict in that region is a whole huge business that some government officials do not want to let it go because of the chunks of money that is passing there, and so also with the leaders of the separatist fighter because of the chunks of money that is passing there.
Now we are looking at the AGC. They say reasons. They say notice the violent acts and the gruesome executions of God's children carried out repeatedly by armed men and women on our communities. Are there reasons for the people to be more worried for what may eventually come in the days ahead? Because as today we've seen another video circulating of another girl who is said to have been taken somewhere around Batibo.
Mr. Leo, I want to be sincere. First of all, going with the question you asked, the morals in question we are talking about are actually, Cameroon has gone down the drain when it comes to morals. Because if you can see these days, it is easy to slaughter somebody openly on a video. It is easy for you, it is just normal for somebody's neck to be slit like that. That's to make you understand that there's no more morals in our society. The same society where people used to be afraid of seeing blood. Blood has become something that they just split anyhow. And so they spill blood without thinking. That's lack of morality. So, when you come to the second question you just asked, Mr. Leo, I want to be sincere with you that there's need for more fear. Why? Because in relation to what is happening, it seems as if the strategy has changed now, and it is targeting the civilian population. It's like a means to awaken, to push. Maybe, I don't know whether it's the government or who they are struggling to push now to react, because you can't see. The other day it was the military that entered Ismautu, killed 7 guys there, killed. The other day was a pastor that was killed in Bamenda. The pastor was killed by the armed civilians. So when you go around, you see the whole issue seems as if it is the civilians that are targeted now. I don't know why, but if we want to look at it, we should be afraid of what is coming. Because if it continues like this, I want to believe that the rest of the population might also rise up, and the situation will get worsened. And so we need to look for strategies to deal with this. If the government is actually hearing, they should listen to what the agency conveners actually are asking that they should do, because I think that now is the time for this issue to stop. If they can bring the separatist leaders to the table and talk with them, both those in prison and in the diaspora, this problem will be solved. And I believe that if that is done, we will not get more blood.
Okay, we will not. The meeting also, at the end of the meeting, it was revealed that there are many more persons who might have been killed who are unaccounted for as we speak.
It is not new. Remember the accountability given by the Human Rights Watch sometimes said the figures they gave about 3,000 Southern Cameroonians killed were figures that could be verifiable, and that a lot are still unverified. What beats my imagination is that it is coming, these recommendations are coming again from the All Anglophone Conference conveners, which I believe very strongly, if they are positive in their mindset, they will know that the government of Cameroon has refused categorically not even to grant themselves the possibility of bringing peace among Anglophones, because we have been insisting on the coming of the All Anglophone Conference, which is still propagated by the Archbishop Emeritus. And more to that, they were the same group of people who sat again and applauded for the government effort for reconstruction and asked Cameroonians to endorse the particular agenda for the reconstruction. Some of us ask the question, in which area, in which part of the world can we construct without first a ceasefire? Because they will tell you that the road Bamenda Babajo was halted because of the crisis, and that again the construction of the Kumba, a Kondo Titi stretch of road, was halted because of the killing and the fighting on that stretch. And we ask the question, what has the government done to bring peace now? The government of Cameroon has refused to negotiate with its own very people. It is not the number of letters. A lot of international organizations have made this call. Southern Cameroonians and the people in the northwest and the southwest region had made serious calls for a dialogue. On the other side, those who stood with the government after were caught and even given serious names, and at the same time we are talking for dialogue, a lot are still being harassed, butchered, and even killed in very unwanted situation. There was, I'm not coming to it, what happened at my 29, the pastor who opened the Ambazonia Church for Liberation was equally caught, tortured, and killed some few days after. A lot of people were arrested, more than 100, and the people of that particular village, Mautu, had to escape to the bush for safety. And a lot of that, when it comes like we watch the issue of treasure, it caught a lot of international attention as if it is a lone crime. We were at times again still talking of Wazizi, which everybody shut off. Government did not even into account. There was no inquiry, nothing. And here we are condemning that the separatists and all what it takes. The government has let a situation that could be handled at an early state to go worst. And when I came back, I remember the horrors of the crimes in Rwanda. I don't want to believe that Rwanda started like this or ended here, or the situation of the wars in Angola, which many have not seen. When political leaders refuse vehemently to hear from the people they govern, there are always serious economic, financial, social, and cultural consequences. Yeah, this is what we're saying.
But the worries of what you're saying, but the conveners of the Anglophone General Conference are saying that killings is not the solution to whatever
Yeah, Mr. Liu, nobody has ever endorsed killing. That is why I'm telling you that the fact that the government is refusing to dialogue, it is at one end promoting killing. Remember, we were talking with you on one platform, and I told you that there is what today we call the Amber Business Challenge, and that as long as the problem keeps on degenerating and pursuing, a lot of actors are in the field. Forget about what we call the Amber Boys. A lot of thieves have left other regions, not only Cameroon, and that is the area they can make finances for themselves. We can get into those areas. You realize that those who commit some crimes, what of the people who are being arrested every day for a common family brawl? They are being termed Ambazonians, and they are picked up by the same military. Yeah, and then we need to go back to negotiate. Yeah, but their outings.
Yes, but seemingly you only blame the military. Why? I don't see you talking about the military.
I said, I'm telling you that when one act is produced, we instead depart on the people we don't see. We are not equally seeing that there are a lot of forces, which government, I said, government knows very well that is liberation of all those who are in prison. Which is the point mentioned there.
Yeah, we are going to come to that.
It's sincere dialogue.
Yeah, but for
between
now,
all forces.
Yes, but the killings are both ways.
That is what we are saying, and in both ways. That's what I'm saying. That one issue should not let us be blinded from looking at the consequences of the various actors. Let's look at the inclusive activities of all the actors involved. And then we can bring out the picture of where we are. Everybody has faults, and I mean, it is the strongest that define the game. If the military should go to their barrack, liberate all those who are in prison, and they get into, I mean, a sincere, including the people who said you could not talk to them, the 2 cubes of sugar that have refused to melt. No, but get them into dialogue, and we see about that.
Yeah, but you are not talking about Amber Boys dropping their guns, like it's suggested by this.
It is what if the military has to go to the barrack, then it will mean.
No.
And what I'm telling you is that if the military has to go to the barrack, it will mean the Amber and their representatives are up to the dialogue. That's what we are saying.
Okay, you discuss with them, and that is what I told you, eh?
I'm just telling you that is the perspective.
Okay. Tina Satya. Okay, you certainly are following up discussions out here in the studio. The meeting also says that there should be the creation of a credible mixed commission. How would such a mixed commission be created with all of what we know? Everybody is suspected. How do we get credible persons to form a commission that can readily play that role of salvaging the situation?
Well, it may not be possible to have that kind of commission because, for one thing, there is a divide and rule policy that the President government is using.
Okay.
You divide them and then you conquer them. That is what has happened. There's a lot of divide between anglophones, tribalism, between the 2 regions. There are people who have their differences. They think that they cannot work together as anglophones, that they are a region and this other one is a region. And those are the problems that we have. And I think that the Anglophone General Conference conveners have not been very honest with Cameroonians, because they speak with both sides of their mouths, which is not proper. At one time, they said they needed to hold a conference to consult with Anglophones to find out their position. They have not consulted with Anglophones. They have not held that conference. So which position are they presenting today? We had them present a communique that they are supporting the UNDP's reconstruction program and all of that. And in that communique, they do not raise all of these issues. So is it that they suddenly came back to their senses and they are seeing that there is need for reconstruction to take place only after the guns have stopped smoking and all of that? So I think they have to be consistent. We have not been told what Bishop Andrew Kia discussed with Eric Tato, for example. Prior to the major national dialogue, they went to the United States, they met separatists like Eric Tato. We have not had feedback. Cameroonians don't know what they discussed. Senator Mbelamuki Charles met with some of these separatists in the US. We have not had feedback. So there's some kind of disjoint in the way government is functioning. And somebody was trying to say that they should not put the blame on President Paul Biya. Everything that is happening in Cameroon, whether in the Northwest or in the Far North or anywhere, rests squarely on the head of state, the President of the Republic. Because the constitution of the country, he's all powerful. Maybe some Cameroonians, they don't know this. The constitution of the country says that the people shall elect him. And when they elect him, they transfer the sovereignty of the country to him. And Article 5 of the Constitution says that the President of the Republic shall be the head of state. So he has dual functions. And Article 2 says he shall be the one to direct government policy. He shall be the symbol of the state. He shall be the one to ensure the respect of the Constitution. Has he ensured that? Has he ensured that the constitution is respected? That since the conflict started in 2016, when lawyers presented demands, until this day, we have 11 members of the Higher Judicial Council, for example, and there is just one Anglophone. We have 10 regions in the country. At least there should have been 2 Anglophones in such a supreme body of the land. But we have not had that. There are a lot of things that the head of state has not been able to do because every power lies with him. The constitution says that, I think Article 8 sub 3, that he shall ensure the security of the country within and without. But now we have insecurity. We have people who are beheaded day in, day out. We have people who are kidnapped here and there. People are killed. There are extrajudicial killings, arrests, and all of that. The head of state has to come in because the constitution empowers him to be to take charge of all of that. Article Section 8 sub 10 of the constitution says that he shall appoint to civil and military positions. So he can appoint, he can dismiss. Article 10 of the constitution says that he shall appoint the prime minister. And he can also dismiss the prime minister. He shall be the one to define the duties of the prime minister. He appoints members of government, he defines their duties. So if members of government are failing to arrest the situation that we have at hand, then the head of state is to blame. Because if he keeps on renewing his confidence in this kind of people, then something is wrong somewhere. And like we read, I read in Jeune Afrique, a story in Jeune Afrique, that there's power play in government. There's a cabal at the presidency that has its own agenda for the crisis. And the prime minister's office that also has another agenda. So there's some kind of conflict. So until the government unites itself also, we may not have a solution to the crisis. So the priest, the conveners of the Anglophone General Conference and all of that, they should be talking to their Christians. All of us know that the head of state, President Paul Biya, for example, is a Roman Catholic. So somebody like Cardinal Tuli and the other bishops and others should meet their Christian and talk to him and explain these things to him. And so that the head of state, if it is that because there's the claim that he's not being exposed to the right information, and if the priest will know what is happening, and every Christian will listen to their priest, they should meet the head of state and explain the things to the head of state as it is. Because as it stands, the separatists or the soldiers and all of that, they belong to a faith. They are either Muslims, they are either Christians, or they belong to one house of worship. And if these conveners represent the religious community, they should be talking to their Christians. They should talk to them to drop the arms. They should talk to the soldiers. And Jeune Afrique said when Sisiku and others held talks recently in Yaoundé, although the Minister of Communication says that what the press is representing is not consistent with reality. But then Jeune Afrique says there were talks. And then during these talks, Sisiku, Ayub Tambe and others, they made concessions. They have shifted from their stance of asking the military to move entirely out of Northwest and Southwest region to asking them to move to the barracks, to just return to the barracks. And it will mean that if the military returns to the barracks, then Sisiku Ayub Tambe and his separatist movement should be able to also ask the armed fighters to return to their own barracks or whatever they have as a fallback position. And from there, they can negotiate a ceasefire and also encourage them to drop their weapons and go back to the disarmament process, and so they can be reintegrated in society. And I think that for me, this is an amnesty that has been granted, because if somebody who has killed can be forgiven, somebody who has killed people and they confess that they have killed and the state forgives them through the disarmament process, then every other separatist who says that who renounces the struggle can also be pardoned through this process. So the issue of amnesty, I think somehow it has been handled, though not expressly. So I think we are making progress, but the religious leaders, they have to be truthful, they have to go to the right quarters and present the facts as they are. And they have to know that government has 2 tiers. The prime minister is working at his own level, there's a come at the presidency working at its own level, and all of these people are appointed by the president. So everything should be channeled to the president, who should be able to decide and bring this crisis to an end.
How do we get this commission to be able to work and deliver?
There can be no commission. There can be no commission if the Anglophone General Conference did not meet. Then how can we get a commission? Because Anglophones, there is need for an intra-Anglophone dialogue, because Anglophones are divided. There are persons who say they want outright separation. There are persons who say they want a 2-state federation. Others are asking for a 10-state federation. Others are okay with the status quo. There are others who want the decentralization process to be improved. There are others who have bought the special status. I think that because the special status is still a very empty calabash, Anglophones should meet and design and design the framework of the special status and present to government.
Okay.
If this special status has to go, this is what we propose as anglophones, this is what we can accept, and this is how it should be implemented. So the government does not sit on its own and come up with something that will be criticized tomorrow.
Okay, the conveners at Bako, they say they want government to bring about a ceasefire. How do we get that done?
Well,
this ceasefire was called by the United Nations Secretary General globally, but the convener says the government should do everything. They say we appeal to the government to do everything possible to bring about a ceasefire.
I think a ceasefire should be the first thing that should happen on both sides, because it's the only way where it can create an environment for dialogue. People cannot dialogue, people cannot reconstruct when they are gone, moving left and right, up and down. It's not possible. So the call for ceasefire, I think, should be the first step, and this should be a decision taken not only by the government, also should be if the separatist fighters also are willing to dialogue. They should also halt and return back to a base where it can create an environment where discussions can take place. Because right now, as it is, I don't see a way out where this problem can actually be resolved. Because you look at it from, if I want to look at it, I'm just trying to be balanced here. You know, he talked about the head of state being all to be blamed, which is true. But at the end of the day, the government as well is a very huge organization. It's just like in the Vatican, the president there is a pope. But if you look at the level of corruption that happens within the Catholic Church, you come to realize that even the pope is unaware of certain things. Only reports are brought back to him. So for an individual, even though he appoints people, for an individual to manage a huge organization like this sometimes is very challenging. So there are weaknesses which I would say that he has to take the blame for it, because he is the head of state. I don't refuse that fact. But I also just want to isolate the fact that the government, the administration, is different from the head of state, even though he appoints all his administrators. So it is but necessary that a call for ceasefire should be done, and it is not a place where we need to wait for the UN to ask us to call for ceasefire, because at the end of the day, the UN has failed in the civil conflicts in Cameroon. As we still speak till now, they have been unable to do anything about it, because the UN, if you look at the 5 permanent members in the UN, you have France, you have China, you have the United States, you have the United Kingdom, and you have Russia. Those are the 5 permanent members in the UN Security Council that are unchangeable, and the other 10 members are only voted and is renewable after every 2 years. So at the end of the day, the UN cannot just step in because they are seeing an interest of France from another angle. Mr. Leo, if you permit me to just elaborate this a little bit. You know that since 2010, Cameroon regained its sovereignty from France. And we have seen several contracts, including the military contract that President Biya refused to sign. Almost one of the last was the Douala seaport, which was taken from Bolloré. That was just a year ago. I think in about October or so. He refused to renew that. And you come to realize that Sonara was almost the last back for France. Now Sonara got burnt, which was a refinery that was built by the French government to refine crude oil. So at the end of the day, we come to realize now that the Cameroon government is going to build a new refinery, because at the end of the day, the contract for 50 years that France had over Cameroon has lost. If you look 2006, when Cameroon won the case over Nigeria in the Bakassi Peninsula, you come down to 2010 when Cameroon regained its sovereignty for the 50 years and refused to renew that contract, because France knew that Cameroon was a good, the head of state was a good student. He was going to play along with them. You come now in 2014, we started hearing the Boko Haram in the north, and then closely to the 2016, we started hearing now the uprising of the separatist fighters in the 2 regions to split the country apart. Now you come to ask yourself, but what is the challenge here? Now I would say that the people who in 2015 where Afrique Media was being closed down, were being banned in Yaoundé and in Douala, there was a protest here where the government of Cameroon gave them sanction for 1 month, and then there was a population that came out and said no, this TV station must carry on, because France and the US was being criticized to have sponsored not only the Boko Haram but also the separatist fighters in those 2 regions. So let us Cameroonians, let us be very keen to the certain desires that we want. All I am saying here, Mr. Leo, is that true that we must be able to get down into negotiation as Cameroonians to bring about the solution in the northwest and the south, and it must be such that will carry along the separatist fighters in that campaign, not a one that will isolate them out and make them to look like some kind of enemy that the state has to eliminate. No, my point is that if the all anglophone conference that was led by the Tumi and the other religious leader, they needed to come out and speak the truth so that we can see how our brothers and our sisters in those 2 regions can all join in the reconstruction process.
Okay. These conveners say that from our side, we are convinced that for the ceasefire to happen, the army should go back to their original barracks and the armed groups drop their weapons.
Mr. Leo, it is a nice decision and proposal. Let me use the word proposal, not decision. It's a good and powerful proposal, which I think is not new. It's an old proposal that has always been brought by many. But the truth is that it is not just like that the military will pull to the barrack. It would be a nice thing if the president, whom I know and recognize as the person who actually declared this war, can come out and actually say, okay, I am calling the military to pull back to the barrack. I'm certain that will happen. But as long as the government keeps on playing around with this issue, more lives will be destroyed. And the proposal of Tumi and his group will mean nothing, and actually means nothing, because before coming to talk about this, a lot of bodies, international organizations and nations have been calling on for a ceasefire. And till date, as we are talking, nothing has happened. And Mr. Leo, I'll be sincere with you that it will be difficult for the separatists to drop down their guns. Reason being that they have already seen the power that comes along with the gun in their hands. They have tested of it, and if to tell them to drop it down will mean a lot. And so if they actually want them to drop that gun, a lot of things need to happen. And one of those things we are talking about is that there should be an open floor for a dialogue, an open table for a dialogue. When that is done, the persons, the leaders in questions. Okay,
they should dialogue before the ceasefire?
No, we can't
they engage ceasefire?
Let them engage it. Let them engage on underground dialogue. The leaders now will give a go ahead to the separatist fighters, to the Amber boys, to stay back. Because as long as the call is coming from somewhere, not from their men, they will never drop those guns. They will keep on fighting. And I'll be sincere to tell you that there are a lot of them out there who are willing to die than see this thing end. And so there is need for...
What do you mean by die than see which thing end?
Yes, because I've heard a lot of them say that they will kill us to the last of us. Say, until the last of them is dealt with, there will be there must be separation. So, Mr. Leo, from what I'm talking, I am not talking because I just want to talk. A lot of pain is out there. A lot of individuals are suffering. But the government of Cameroon is quiet, doing practically nothing. I saw of recent our Minister of Territorial Administration came out and released stuff. The reactions that came with it. You can't be telling people not to buy cutlasses when they are in a farm environment.
Yes, we discussed about that.
Yes, I'm just saying those are the kind of decisions that actually spur a lot of anger instead of solving a problem. Okay. So when you take such decisions, you don't expect in any way that this problem should end. So we need people who can come to the table and talk.
We are talking about
yes, I'm talking their decisions.
Yes. I'm talking about the issue of ceasefire. The guys, our clergy, the bishops and the moderator, the big man of the CBC and others, they said, and the imams are saying that they want the troops, the government troops, to go back to their barracks, and that the Amber boys should drop their weapons. That is, they want a ceasefire because they believe that after a ceasefire, other things can come. How do we get there?
Yeah, but how do we get there is a question that has been answered in other places. Remember, the government started some hidden dialogue with separatists, and the same government came later to say there was no dialogue. I want to tell you that equally in settlement of international disputes, ceasefire has never been a condition for sincere dialogue. Dialogue can still proceed, like many separatists, southern Cameroonians believe that a dialogue out of Cameroon may bring us more peace than even the preconditions we are proposing. At one time when these preconditions were given, government even told Cameroonians that it does not adhere to religious authorities' opinion. It is either the church is under the government or the government is under the church. And so the church, like Tumi Group, cannot impose some conditions or preconditions to the state. So what we are thinking now is the government might equally love that we should even kill the idea of ceasefire and instead ask the government to engage into dialogue. Whatever form of dialogue, if the parties agree. We saw the situation in Sudan, and we're even saying continuously with the situation in Syria, that while fighting was still going on, various parties were meeting in Geneva and many other towns in Europe to discuss the lasting peace in Syria. A lot of other groups are there with the government, others still resisted. But this has not stopped the Syrian government from continuous negotiation. At the last session, it goes even with Libya. We have not seen a complete ceasefire in Libya, but you will see that various factions, since the fall of Muammar Gaddafi, are always in quest for dialogue. And that dialogue cannot most often be handled or be refrained by the government in power. Because if that is the case, I can't understand a situation where you will call for dialogue and you are the referee, you are the judge, you clean or program the agenda or make the planning when it will start, when it will end, the resolution arrive at. It is all worrying. Is a ceasefire a problem or settlement of a problem? Like many others, what many said here was that they are going to give them some time. So when they will fight, they will get tired. Remember, that is what the Minister of Justice told the lawyers, that when the lawyers will stay for some time and they will not have food to eat, they will go back to court. Yes, lawyers have gone to court. What has become of the situation? These are some of the things the government of Cameroon is not seeing. That at times it is set in law that delay defeats equity. What we are supposed to do today, that you fail to do, it may get a situation rotten in the next 24 or 48 hours. That is why within many state machineries, in dialogue is a continuous, it's part and parcel of governance. We talk of the yellow shirts in France. They have never stopped dialogue. The French people are in continuous dialogue with various fractions of syndicate in France. So why can't we dialogue with our own people? The destruction and the arrogancy, the brutality that was manifested in the streets of Barcelona has never stopped the government in Madrid from considering Catalonians as part of Spain. And dialogue has always been a continuous act. We continue doing so. 50 years after, in Colombia, remember, the government went down to the FARC rebels and discussed with them, and that country is now maintaining peace. That is what has earned the president of that particular country his Nobel Peace Prize. And you can imagine the lessons we learned from the young prime minister in Ethiopia when he negotiated with the Eritreans for a long-lasting peace. You can imagine that. What dialogue can bring, in fact, maybe a whole legacy. Why not? At the very early stage, if this government would have accepted the proposals of those whom we call the consortium members, we wouldn't have gotten here. So dialogue was already going on, but the government thought that they had overused a lot of time for traveling. the Gogomo Commission moving to Bamenda 3 or 4 times was that they should leave Bamenda with a white paper that all have accepted and that strike will no longer continue, not knowing that this issue was going to take us 4 years, 10 years, and what not. Nobody knows what tomorrow holds for. We are insisting that dialogue is the way out, and that is the way out. Whether ceasefire or not, when the parties are comfortable, you'll be surprised that the streets will be filled, and that Southern Cameroon may come back to its life, except, I said, the sincerity here is that government should accept that there is a problem and that there is a way. Creating multiple of commissions have not led us to anywhere. Budget to those same commissions with their own groups of bandits.
What are you saying? Are you saying that Cameroonians cannot solve this problem?
It is more than them. 4 years is too much a period, Mr. Leo. We are not saying so. An individual, please excuse me.
You think Cameroonians cannot solve
it? No, Cameroonians can solve the problem.
No, they have already failed.
No,
I'm just telling you that you can. He said he can. It's not that they will.
Have failed.
One thing I will tell you.
So you want international organizations to come in?
I have called already for the intervention of anybody who can help Cameroon rescue this problem. If you're in your house, let me say something. If you're in your house, you have a problem with your wife, the moment that problem is settled within the confines of the building and that the neighbors are not disturbed, you not hear any neighbor coming to complain. But the moment a problem, your wife rushes out of your gate and enters your neighbor's compound. We have refugees all over Africa now. We have refugees from Southern Cameroon disturbing our neighbors. It means it is no longer an internal problem. It is a regional, if not an international problem.
Yeah, Tilaris Atia, you are going to come in after Tilaris to react to this. Tilaris Atia, you think that this problem cannot be fixed by Cameroonians, like our clergy are saying?
This problem can be solved by Cameroonians. It is not above us. It is still an internal problem, internal conflict, and it can be solved. On the issue of ceasefire, it is very tricky to talk about a ceasefire at this point, because when somebody says the military should move out of the northwest and southwest regions, or they should go back to the barracks, and then the boys should withdraw, they should not forget that the military has been living with us since independence in 1961. The military has been living with us, and we have not had the kind of carnage that we've had today throughout since we had independence. So it means that something is wrong somewhere, and the military came in to fight because some people had picked up arms. So one way or the other, those who had come in with arms have to leave. They have to drop their arms first before the military can go, because we know of areas where the military has left. For example, they have withdrawn tactically for a while, and we see the kind of havoc that the armed men are imposing on the population. We have had armed men burn down palaces. We've had armed men desecrate the tradition of the people. In Lebanon, for example, we have somebody who says he's the king. We have somebody who has put up his stool in the palace of the throne, because the military is not in those places. So it means that if the military were to leave, the population is going to suffer. So what is going to happen is this: the armed men who provoke the military to go down to the field in the first place, they have to go back, they have to drop their arms and be reintegrated into society. The military have then the barracks after that happens. And as anglophones, I think we have missed the point already. Why were teachers on the streets? Why did lawyers go to the streets? Why did Mancho BBC enter a courtroom and march at City Chemist on the 25th of November 2016? We'll go to the issues and we trace where the certain victims. We are going to sit down at the field. The anglophones have zero the issues. Nobody talking about development, nobody talking about the problems lawyers presented. Up to this day, we still have magistrates who don't master common law being appointed to jurisdictions in the northwest and southwest region. And the war in the northwest and southwest region has clouded every other consideration. So government now is working with impunity. So we have to stop the war. The separatists, they have to withdraw so that anglophones can take stock of how far they have come. So what I'm proposing is that government should also take the lead in telling Cameroonians how far government has gone in addressing the demands that were presented by teachers, the demands that were presented by lawyers, the demands that were presented by Mancho BBC and his peers who were in the coffin, so that the population can know that Amber boys have no reason to be fighting. Because the boys who are in the bushes, they tell the population that, Yaoundé is evil. Look at the ring road, they have not done it. Look at Menchum, they have not been able to harness the Menchum fall to give you electricity. Look at the roads in Bamenda, for example, how they are depreciating. Look at the Kumba, Bangem and other roads, how bad they are. So when the separatists in the bushes are telling the population all of these things, the population thinks that government is truly evil and they want to sympathize with the population. But if government were to come out and present the true picture and present how repentant they are, I think that is going to be a new phase in what we are going on. Because if the population were to understand the realities on the ground and dissociate themselves from the armed men, then we are not going to have what is happening, because it's only the population that can denounce these boys and cause them to drop their arms or to flee. Because if they collaborate with the military, it will be easy to secure the environment. And so government has to take the lead in educating us. Lawyers and teachers seem to have been have taken the back seat when they are the ones who started the crisis in the first place. So they have to come back on board. We have to go back to look at the demands. What Mancho BBC presented, how far have we gone? What the lawyers presented, how far have we gone? What the teachers presented, how far have we gone in addressing them? When we get there, after evaluating the success or the failures of the bilingualism commission, the disarmament process, the special status and all of that, I think we should have to stop the war. We have to stop fighting and see how we can get benefits. Because government, I'm sure, understands already. And we should be able to know how Anglophones can be made better. I'm not sure it is by burning all the beautiful houses in our communities, kidnapping all those who are hardworking, and they have some money, we kidnap them and collect ransom. We stop children from going to school. All this is going to take Anglophones 1 million years behind. And we cannot afford this at this point.
Okay. You seemingly, at Bako, you were not comfortable when doctor says international community should come and fix what is not right in Cameroon. But don't you also think that this problem has been prolonged for above 4 years, giving reasons to think that the international community should come in?
It's not the place for the international community to come in, even though if they in their good faith decided to assist us, we wouldn't have refused. But I'm saying that it is not a situation which is above Cameroonians. Now if you look at what the situation actually is when the teachers and the lawyers began, at a certain period, that struggle, like the young man in Turkey is citing, that struggle was being hijacked. It's no longer, we cannot go back and say, let's look at what the lawyers were saying and what the teachers were saying. It is not the case anymore. The revolution or the complaints were being hijacked by another group of people who call themselves separatist fighters, who want to separate the country. Now, if I remember a certain period where we saw, when Ayabacho was going to make a certain deal, an oil deal with one European company to come and exploit in the English-speaking region. So you come to realize that these individuals who have hijacked this struggle and the people who say they are in the diaspora sponsoring them. In the early stage, we said that it was really foolish enough for you to allow people in a different country who do not reside in Cameroon to actually influence your decisions on ground. But I remember it was in 2017 that almost 17 or 15 warrants of arrest was sent to the international community for the arrest of these certain individuals who are in the diaspora. But none of these warrant of arrest was ever executed. I am not sure that the government did it intentionally to have them arrested, but to know the mind of the international community. The UN did nothing, the US did nothing, Europe did nothing. But these individuals are out there that are actually conducting these separatist fighters on ground to carry certain killings among their own citizens. The same thing we also see with the government. That the government also, the ground soldiers that are also down there are carrying very unorthodox killing that does not conform to human rights. So this is happening on both sides. But what I'm saying here is that it is now obvious that these individuals in the diaspora, honestly speaking, they are being backed by the EU. They are being backed by the UN, because I cannot understand how the UN can be calling for ceasefire when you are keeping these boys are living there with you people. What is difficult for you to call, arrest these boys, and then know what really they want? Because at the end of the day, you come to realize that if that region, as they claim that they want to separate, honestly speaking, Mr. Leo, if separation comes in those two regions, no human being will be able to stay in that two regions. No human being. All the citizens will fled out, because there will be the kind of bloodshed that will take place there will be such that we have never seen, because there is also a pending issue between the Northwest and the Southwesterners. We should not forget about that, which is pending behind the ground. And we should also not forget that about 90% of the Southwesterners are against the separatist fighters. We say that many of the Northwest are in favor. No, that is what the people say on ground. We are speculating. I'm not saying as my opinion. We go on ground, we hear what people say. So what I'm saying here, Mr. Leo, is that
but he's saying what he thinks. When you are saying,
okay.
Nobody questioned what you were saying.
Oh, my brother, just go ahead and talk, brother.
They separate this as yes.
Need facts. When you spoke, he did not ask for facts. Now, go on, please.
All I'm saying here is that it is difficult for dialogue. In my terms, I look at what it is for the separatist fighters to put down their guns, because the influence of these separatist fighters, many of us say, is coming from the diaspora. But I am saying that it is the Western nation, and to be candid with you, the Cameroonian government is aware of the ghost behind the separatist fighters, and that is why it has to take a decision for the Cameroonians to understand that it is time that we should be done with the Westerners. It should be time that we should be done with getting influence from the Western nation, and we should come together and see how we can resolve our own crisis.
Professor, the conveners are saying we call on the government to resume talks with the leaders of the separatist movements in Kondengi prison, and also those in the diaspora, like to say that when Ayuk Tabe announced that talks actually were on their way, or that talks were engaged already in Yaoundé, and then a government communique came out to say those talks or the information circulating on social media actually did not reflect a reality. Are they saying that the government erred by coming out?
Mr. Leo, sincerely, I would say the government is not actually counteract exactly what Ayuk Tabe said, because they simply said what the newspapers and the media is actually carrying does not reflect reality. There could be a reality which was not actually reflected in the media. So for me, I believe that there were talks, because I don't think that it was just a smoke without fire. Something happened, and I want to buy with the conveners of the agency that it is very important that these talks, if there were any, should continue, because to solve this kind of problem, there is need for those pre-talks to go from on the ground. There should be a kind of talk to find out the minds of these people. What do you want? How should we go about it? So that when they get the proposals, then they could create an opportunity for a better talk. But the situation in which we have at hand at this particular moment means more. You see, when we say that we can handle this issue by ourselves, it limits us at a particular point, because so far we have been struggling to handle it by ourselves. And like Doctor said earlier, we have refugees in Nigeria. We have refugees in other nations around Africa. We are not, when they talk of international community does not only talk about the UN or the Europeans and whatsoever. We have, for example, what just happened in the western zone of Africa, where the ECOWAS went down to Mali to actually talk to Ibrahim Keita to step down from power. You see, when these people went in there, it's because they saw that the situation was already getting out of hand, and as a body, they went there to talk to their colleague. Such a situation has not yet happened in Central Africa. And this crisis has been hitting Central Africa for 4 good years. And it is actually affecting the entire CEMAC zone, because today, food used to leave Cameroon and enter Equatorial Guinea. I don't think that's the case anymore. He used to leave Cameroon and go to Gabon. I don't think that's the case anymore. And as a result of that, there is hunger affecting those nations. So I think that first, the CEMAC leaders could do something. If it is more than them, then they could go further. So if the CEMAC leaders have no authority to come in to handle this situation, then I'm trying to ask the question, how then are we considered as part of the CEMAC zone? And if you tell me that this problem can be handled by Cameroonians, why has it not been handled till this moment in which we are talking? Because this is 4 years going, and we are not talking as if they had handled so far. There's something that has been done which we could say, okay, because of this that has been done, we could say, okay, these people will not handle it. Nothing has been done to bring this crisis to an end. Practically nothing. At the moment when I say practically nothing, it's not because they claim that they are formed commissions. These commissions, to me, they are all cosmetic solutions to a problem that was supposed to have been solved long. And if we cannot call our fellow brothers, good luck Jonathan left and went down to Mali. Why can't they move to Cameroon? That is because it is ECOWAS. But I believe that if things get worse, Nigeria will be affected more than any other nation around. So I think if Nigeria too can come, that's also the international community still coming. So when we talk of international community, we should not only focus on Europeans, because Europeans are not the solution to African problems. We could have an African solution to African problems by bringing in Africans to handle the problem in Cameroon. Okay,
but my question to you was the fact that they are calling for talks to resume between the separatist leaders in Kondengi and those in the diaspora.
I already accepted it.
Yeah, you said it is even an old proposal.
Because formally, what we got out here was that talks took place between the government.
There were pre-talks.
Yes, and not those of the diaspora, yes. But they are saying that they should be involved. Yes.
I said there are pre-talks, and as I said, the government of Cameroon has been acting like a mad dog. I mean, they don't even know the procedure to assume. Remember before the Grand National Dialogue that they called, these same people that were in Kondengi were not consulted. The people were dispatched abroad to talk with the leaders in the diaspora. Now that they had an intention to start with this, something which the whole world was waiting to listen, they started with the people in Kondengi and forgot about those who were in the diaspora. So at one point, like the other guy said on Skype, they have a policy of always trying to divide and rule, and that the two people should not come together. That is the problem. They fought first that the agency should not unite Southern Cameroonians. They fought that the diaspora and those who are in Kondengi should not unite again. When you see the voices that some people in the diaspora are now talking, you believe very strongly that maybe the government too is still manning the energy abroad and trying to buy them off from where they all started. And we know the techniques of our government. They inherited it from their colonial fathers, and they are doing it even more than them.
Are you saying that the infighting between the separatist leaders today is fueled by Yaoundé?
Exactly, and that one there's no lie. If we can bring in fake electoral observers, which were manned by the same Yaoundé, what can't we do? I'm just telling you that.
Doctor, is there a family where we will not find division?
Okay, now you are believing. I am just telling you that those who are in the diaspora, you find some came for the Grand National Dialogue. So you could imagine that they were at the beginning for the struggle. They came for the National Dialogue. And when they left the National Dialogue, what happened? Everybody that came for the National Dialogue went home with his own small envelope. And everybody is happy that if things can go better.
600,000.
No, but we don't care about the amount. You know what 600,000 can do to a basic family back home. When we take 600,000 and give a common family at home, it is a plus. I'm telling you, the government, that is the level of the miserable nature.
The last call is that everybody who is detained, separatist leaders, as a major step, they should be released. But I will not describe a government as a mad dog.
No, I mean, I'm talking of the disjointed. Let me remove the word mad dog, but I said their decisions and their approach is disjointed. And you believe that.
They are calling
I said you will believe that very strongly.
Yes, they are calling for everybody to be released.
They are calling. Is that what the government is doing? I said when you look at the government, we have created about 4 commissions. We dispatched a different team to the diaspora. At the time, those in Kondengi were not to even be talked to. They came later, they said they have to talk with those in Kondengi, and those in the diaspora were not to be talked to. Are we really for a solution? Are we sincere to ourselves? Or we just want to play with time? And the moment we keep on playing with time, every day circumstances and lives are being lost. This is our problem. How do we stop the loss of lives? Even the boys who were just hearing within this week, those that we said they were taken and forgiven for the disarmament centers, a lot of them are now leaving the disarmament centers. Where have they gone to? What will become of them? Which means the same decision creating the disarmament commission and its facilities were not properly put in place to contain these boys that have been in the bushes. Let's try to be sincere to Cameroon. I have insisted several times that we will pass away, but the nation Cameroon will remain. Okay, what legacy will you leave behind after you leave that particular position in which you are the leader? Okay, what have you contributed to the growth of this nation? Let's think about that. Our life is not all about ourselves, but what life we impacted on those people we governed. Okay. That is leadership. Okay, Kingsley Bissong, my prof, watching from the United States. Good evening to you. Glad to know you're following the program. And to you, Bamason Romain, good evening to you. Tilarus Atia, you followed Professor Mark Anthony says nothing has been done by the government so far. And they still claim that no solution can come from within this government.
Well, I think government has everything in its powers to find solutions to the problem.
But in addition, Tilarus, doctor says the government is fueling the division in the ranks of the separatist leaders. At least you were in prison with Barrister Bobala, and you know how some of those things. Do you believe that it is the government that is sponsoring this division, the split?
Well, I think that I don't know. I don't have the facts about the accusations or the allegations that Doctor has presented. But I want to say that the blood money, when people are kidnapped, they pay ransoms, and some of this money is enjoyed by people in the diaspora. You expect that the blood money will haunt them, and it's expected to have division. Because when you watch their live videos, when you watch the things they say on Facebook and other of their platforms, you discover that there is the aspect of divide that is created by the money and power. Who manages which community? Who is the one to collect the ransom? Who is supposed to collect what or what? It's about money. All the problems we have is about money. So I don't think that it is government that is making them to fight over the contributions they have made to buy whatever they want to buy with it. That's somebody that's embezzled and all of that. I'm not sure it's government that's helping them to embezzle. So when somebody says it's government that's causing the fighting, I say no. I think that it is an extension of the Northwest-Southwest divide. It is an extension of the greed. And when people enjoy blood money and people are dying innocently, we expect that the blood money is going to haunt them wherever they are, even by the US, because the law of karma is going to haunt them wherever they are. And I said that the solution is in the hands of government, because government has everything in its powers. Government has in its powers to maintain security. Government has in its powers to assure the population that your demands were this and that, and we have solved them. We are going to construct the roads. We are going to do this and show good faith. When the government shows good faith to the population is going to in turn tell the Amber boys to leave or hand them over to competent authorities so they can be disarmed and taken to the disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration centers. And just to tell Dr. Ako that the disarmament centers are not permanent homes. You don't have to say that the detainees or those who are there are escaping and all of that. No, it's not a permanent home. People go there, they are reformed, they reshape their minds, and they send them out back into the communities. They reintegrate into the communities. So it's expected that it is the disarmament centers will someday close. If the war ends, everybody is reintegrated in society, then those centers will be obsolete and should be closed. So government should also see that those who are in detention are released. Because if somebody is kept in detention because they burnt the national flag, for example, I'm not saying that it's a good thing to burn the national flag, but then somebody who says on camera, on record, that I killed soldiers, I killed civilians, I raped and all of that, and they are forgiven. What about those who, for example, only shared a text message? Those who are accused of only paying something in a bus or somewhere and were arrested. I think that government should show good faith. There should be the release of all of those who are in detention. There should be discussions, dialogue, a broad-based dialogue with everybody. And I think that the armed fighters and their supporters and every other person should be able to show good faith. They should show good faith because the state has taken steps. And since the state started taking steps, releasing some detainees, creating commissions, making concessions with common law lawyers and teachers, we have not seen anything on the side of separatists. It has been from one strong point to the next. It is either their way or the highway. There is need for us to have a middle ground. And the separatists should know that the population is the one that is suffering. So if their interest was to protect the population, then they should have seen by now that that population is not being protected. And their masters, I'm not surprised that some of their handlers are pastors, the pastor pastors abroad, they are masquerading for pastors, are the ones sponsoring the killings. When the number one commandment, the Bible says, thou shalt not kill. So I think that we have to go back to the fundamentals of what the struggle was. The struggle was not to kill. The struggle was to ensure that Anglophones are treated better. And I think that government can do that. Government can treat Anglophones better. Government can repeal some of the laws that are obnoxious, that are against the unity of Anglophones in Cameroon. And when that is done, when development is spread out evenly in the country, when everybody feels a part of Cameroon, I think that this problem will be resolved. It is not for international community to resolve the problems. And when somebody says that, tries to compare CEMAC with ECOWAS, I think it's very problematic. It doesn't work. Because in CEMAC, I think Cameroon appears to be the only democracy, or something that is a democracy in the Central African sub-region. When you go to Chad, these are countries that have had military intervention. You go to Central African military intervention. You go to Equatorial Guinea and all of that. Those are not people who can show an example to Cameroon. So when we say we should rely on a country like Central Africa to make inputs as to how the crisis in Cameroon can be resolved, we know they have their own crisis, and Cameroon has been the one trying to help them. Cameroon is the one trying to help to fight Boko Haram. Cameroon is the one trying to maintain security in the Gulf of Guinea. So it means Cameroon can be able to solve its own problems if the President of the Republic, who has all the powers given to him by the Constitution, has the goodwill to solve this problem. We can solve it in one.
Tilaris, we move over to our next talking point after the short break. Welcome back. You're watching Prime Hour on My Media Prime. We are going to be looking at this call by the chiefs for the government to help them return to their respective policies across the southwest and northwest region. Atem Ibako Andrin, why did our chiefs leave their policies in the first place, to the point where they're now asking to be assisted to go back?
Well, the chiefs, they left because the separatist fighters realized that the chiefs were in conjunction with the government, or they were pro-government. And since the separatist fighters did not want any intervention, or did not want any heads of government in those two regions, they had to chase the chiefs out, especially those in the southwest. And the fact that the chiefs as well in the early stage did not take up the stand to actually tell the government, even though there were some methods they tried in bringing to resolve the crisis. Like I remember the one in the CPDM hall in Kumba, where the Fond VE Mukete, I think that was about 2017, called on all the funds of the northwest and the southwest to rally at his palace, and then told the governor of the southwest region to send eyes of the government to participate in that meeting to see how the chiefs were going to come about the solution that they can present to the government that can bring peace in these two regions. The governor refused. And I remember carefully well that the Fonvi Mukete was not happy with the government and said and told the governor that it is people like you that cause problem in this country. So you come to realize that the chiefs at one point they tried their own method, but it didn't work. But I would say as a Pan-Africanist that they did not actually man up to defend their communities by speaking the truth and telling the government that these things that these people have actually complained are things that should be looked upon, and they did not stand alongside with their people. So this is how caused the departure or the exiles of some of these chiefs in their from their native land or from their palaces to seek refuge in the French zone. So at the end of the day, for the chiefs to go back, I find it almost impossible while these separatist fighters are still holding ground. But what I want to say here is that I want the separatist fighters to understand, like I have been saying on social media ever since this crisis began, these separatist fighters are not aware of what is happening in those two regions. They are fighting, but they do not know the core of the problem. Because the people who sit in diaspora, I have seen cases where the American government will enter into country and pick out terrorists and leave out, go into countries, destabilize the government and remove the head of state and dethrone him down and even send him to exile or send him to prison. But ever since we have had the people we have had who are organizing gangs in the name of separatist fighters in those two regions, killing people and kidnapping people as well, we have never seen any actions that have been taken by the international community to bring these people into justice or into order. We all the 17 or 15 warrant of arrest that were sent by the Cameroonian government into the international community for the arrest of these individuals, they have never been brought to justice. I want Cameroonians to look at this. When Sesiko and the other people went into Nigeria, where they had the meeting where they were being taken from Nigeria to Cameroon, ask yourself, why did the Nigerian government allow Cameroon to extradite those individuals to Cameroon? That is number one. We look at, as I've cited the case in 2006, when Cameroon won the case in Bakassi, because all of this is in the fight of oil, which is in the English part of the country, because France is aware that they don't have any more control. And this resistance which you are seeing like this, I cannot understand how the international community will be keeping men who are carrying out atrocities in a country, destabilizing the country. We are not refusing the fact that the government also has a blame to take for not organizing its military to take protect the civilians, even though they are doing that to some extent. But we have also seen an orthodox killing by the military. But what I'm simply trying to say here is that it is a duty and it is a right for a state to protect the interest of its population. Mm-hmm. So Cameroonians must understand the history of this warfare, that these separatist fighters will be very difficult to negotiate with them, but I am calling on them to look at the context as Cameroonians and find a way that we can solve the problem.
Mark Anthony, I think that we all are Africans and we respect our elders, respect authorities, and we respect our traditional rulers. And it is some persons are asking the question, why target traditional rulers who are fathers of almost everybody in the village? Why target them?
Mr. Leo, our traditional rulers are supposed to be custodians of the cultures and traditions of our various communities. And these personalities are not supposed to be brought into power by election or by appointment of any government official, implying that their duties are not supposed to be related to politics. Mm. And as a result of the fact that most of them have politicized what was given to them by virtue of their coronation, they have lost that relationship with their people, where they no more air the voices or air the complaints and air the problems of their people. Because if this situation has attained this level where individuals, chiefs and fawns, whom we are supposed to honor and respect as the custodians of our own traditions in Africa, are belittled, some of them beaten out of their own cities or their own villages, that is to show you that these chiefs have lost something. They have lost that connection with their people, because your people are supposed to be your backing. And it implies that these particular chiefs need to go back to redefine exactly who they are, because they were not called into politics. I don't see how a chief should ask the Minister of Territorial Administration to help him back into his village. How did you leave that village? Why did you leave that village? It is true, some of these boys, like the last time, one of them actually attacked my chief. I had to ask Capo Daniel the other day, because I saw his letter that he wrote, asking that if my phone comes back to the village, they should kill him. I asked that, are you normal with saying that kind of thing? Because in the first place, you are not supposed to touch a phone. That is desecration of the traditional culture. That's desecration of sacred things that they are not supposed to touch. And so the idea in the first place of thinking of getting a phone or a chief molested.
No, there's one of the chiefs in Boya who died in the hands of a separatist.
Yes. When I remember that period of time,
almost 11 of them were taken.
17.
Okay. Yes.
So in relation to all that, Mr. Liu, you start asking questions. How did it come to that point? But I will be sincere to say, it is because most of these funds have dabbled into politics.
Are you saying, Professor, you are a Pan-Africanist? Are you saying that if your father were to misbehave in front of you, you take him, you beat him, you humiliate him?
That is no right that should be given to those boys. They don't have that right to touch them. I am simply saying that in relation to what is happening, because already we are talking from a situation that has happened. These funds have lost their people. Why? Because they sold their rights into the hands of the government. Okay,
let me cue you. If you were called by grace to engage in politics, should you be banished from the village or considered persona non grata because you are engaged in political activities?
Mr. Leo,
don't you also have a right to that same village?
To be called into politics does not necessarily mean that I play along with things that goes against my people. The reason why I enter into politics should be for my people, not against my people. And so the moment you move against your people, you are attracting rebellion, and that is what is happening.
Is it the population that is after the chiefs or the guys with the guns?
You see, when we want to locate it in relation to the population, I want to be sincere. The population of those villages don't want them out. There is something that is happening. The population doesn't want them out. The population of their villages don't want them out. But there are individuals who want them out. And those individuals could still fall align with them. But the problem now is they are not working. Most of some of the funds that I know precisely at this particular moment deep in politics have not been visiting their villages. They have been completely out of their villages. So it is not now that they are going to go into their villages. So such funds who got involved, I don't see any reason why they should be collected. Even their people don't want them. But we are not saying that's how all of them are. There are some that are sincere. There are some that we should receive them back into the community and give them their throne. Because I don't think, like for example, what happened in Lebialem, where this other young man went into the palace and desecrated it. That is an evil that should not happen in Africa. That is to prove that they don't have respect for culture.
Dr. Aku, John, these are traditional rulers who have been leading their respective villages for years. It is true, conditions are really tight out there. And how wise is it for traditional authorities to ask the administration to help them regain their palaces?
I remember when this question is asked, and in fact when the meeting was organized with the Minister of Territorial Administration, the question I asked myself is what assistance they need. Because Cameroonians have a double standard mind. You will go there, people will tell you that they will need much money. If you propose them guards, they will say, no, guards may not do anything. When a Cameroonian start asking for assistance, be very careful. What form of assistance? If the chiefs of those villages have been accepted by their people, like we said, if you're accepted by the people, even the last person of that particular village will defend you. the villagers, in no amount of force, will send a chief out of his village. There are chiefs still living in their villages. Some villages, even more disastrous to this crisis, the chiefs are still in their villages. You will go there, you realize that a lot of those chiefs that have escaped are those who mingle a lot with political positions and gains within the village. That before the crisis, they have been those people who think that standing against their people is always better for them to call an identity from the state. And they have done that repeatedly. When you are called to lead the people, that's why some people tell us that politics does not go with humanity, that politics is gains. And I ask, if politics was not to serve the interests of the people, then there is no need for politics. If you have to get into politics, get into that politics that will develop your area, that politics that will bring in some basic amenities to your people, that politics that open a platform where your village men and women can talk to you equally at any time. That is why I'm still telling you that some of those chiefs still live in their villages. And if this is the case, and now that some can't go back until you are begging for government, so government is going to give you armor cars, the government is going to send the military around your compound, then what becomes of those villagers that will need to come and consult you? Because they will equally pass a law that anybody will see around the palace. So what becomes of you? You become a figure representative. I know very well that there is a house of chiefs that is visible already in the next regional election. So what are they going to do about that? A lot want to get back to their village so that they can have an identity of being representatives of their people. Are they sincerely representing their people? Some villages, we don't even know where the chiefs are. And in fact, the chieftaincy tool have been taken abroad. Others in the United States, others in the UK, others are all over the world. What do we mean? So now that there is a political appointment, is that why they are pleading on the Minister of Territorial Administration? If that is the personal interest, then you are not working for your people. If there is a need, sometime you see that village chiefs that have been against the government, they too have been dethroned. So too, some villagers have had the possibility to, maybe this time around, to replace the chiefs that are not with them. If there was a possibility of doing so, we as Cameroonians and Africans in that manner, we need to learn to protect the values under which we have accepted to lead. The chiefs are supposed to be by the side of their people. I said some time ago that a leader is not only him who stands by his people on the day of celebration. A leader should be equally him that stands by his people in the days of crisis. And these are the types of crisis we're talking of. If a chief cannot hold on to those people in his own village, even if they have the highest machete, I mean, any group entering a village with the villagers in total support of you, that group can never bypass such a chief. When things go wrong, then the center can no more hold. This is what we are saying. Some of these chiefs should be schooled on respecting what they are for and what not. Why not? In fact, in the past, chiefs were said to be apolitical, but it's not a situation again today. What has gone wrong? Why are so many chiefs leaving Yaoundé as ministers or directors to fight for a chieftaincy position in the village? These are some of the things. We have mixed politics with chieftaincy or fondoms or whatsoever traditional title. We must learn to give respect and values to what cultures have been.
Okay, special greetings to all of you watching us from Nyasoso. A special one to you, Mbachu. Ernest, who should also be watching from Nyasoso. Tilaris Atia, was there any need to target the chiefs or the funds, or whether they were nice or representative of their villages or not?
Well, I think the targeting of chiefs simply confirms what some people say, that these boys in the bushes are on drugs, they are on some very cheap weed, and it doesn't keep them in the right frame of mind. Because I don't understand how Anglophones can be fighting for the preservation of the customary values that they have, the common law, and their Anglo-Saxon values, and the traditional values. At the same time, fighting for these values, people are desecrating traditional tools. Because I want to ask myself, what did the funds in Nibialem do, for example? That somebody who desecrate the traditional tools and enthrone themselves as king. How is it possible that the separatists will cause the death of Chief Jembanda of Lisoka Moliwe, I think in July 2018? What crime? We know of chiefs who have been in politics long before now. It was not the problem. The likes of King Bell, when we study Cameroon history, the likes of King Akwa, King Bell, King from Daliga, from Abu Umbi, from Angwafa and others, who were in the protest of the colonization process. They fought against colonialists. They were part of the decolonization process, and they were part of the formation of the modern day Cameroon that we have today. It was not a problem then. Why does it become a problem today that some of these traditional rulers are into politics? In terms of the intolerance that some of these people have. Because if you are for secession or separation or whatever, and some other person thinks that federalism is good or the status quo should be maintained, we should respect people's opinions. And it is this non-respect for the values and the opinions of others that has led to the desecration of our tradition. Somebody who might have had problems with the traditional ruler, who might have been eyeing the throne, who might have been a thief in the community, somebody who was a thief, maybe seizing land and all of those things, and the chiefs came in to mediate. These families are now sponsoring some of these boys to go against the traditional institution. And because there is havoc in the land, some people are benefiting. We know of separatist groups that are harvesting palms. We had the general manager of Pamon said at some point that some of these separatist groups have taken over plantations. They have made it impossible for them, for the CDC, for example, and Pamon to harvest their palms and rubber. These things are harvested by the separatists. So it is the same thing with the chieftaincy institution. They have taken over the institutions. They have cutted away with some artifacts in the museums, and they have sold them to the white man. They have been there is business all along. So I think that whether the chiefs are or the firms are members of the CPDM or SDF or whatever, attacking them is not the way. And I think that government has to step in. I think the chiefs, their request from government to help them is very legitimate, because the law of 1977 guiding and regulating the chieftaincy institution in Cameroon says that the chiefs, traditional rulers, are auxiliaries of the administration. And all of us know that even members of the administration themselves, we have divisional officers who were not living in their subdivisions because of the insecurity. Some of the, like the former divisional officer of Muyuka, who had taken up residence in Limbe, he was replaced because he could not live there. And if the divisional officer who has soldiers at his command, who represents the head of state in that jurisdiction, cannot be in his duty post, what about traditional rulers who are only auxiliaries? Traditional rulers, auxiliaries means that they help government in implementing government action. So you cannot be an auxiliary to somebody and at the same time be against that person. So the population has to be educated, they have to be schooled, they have to understand the challenges that these traditional rulers are facing and be the one to provide support. They should be the ones to preserve their cultures. So I think the separatists in the diaspora and all of that, I saw some people are celebrating Sisiku Ayutabe because he has a title Sisiku. These are traditional titles. So if a traditional ruler gives a title to somebody and you turn around and want to destroy that institution and still using the title, then it tells us that we are not thinking right. So the separatists and government and every other person should see to it, the population, they should see to it that the chiefs return to their palaces. They should see to it that the chiefs are protected, like in the past. In the past, we used to go and work in the chief's farm. We used to protect the chief. We should ensure that the chief has food, he has meat to feed himself and his children and his wives. But that is not the case today. That is why you have some of them trying to work in the public service to make money. So you cannot say that because somebody is working in the public service, they are for government and against the population. No, it should not be that way.
Okay, Tilaris Atemibako, what should follow this meeting that took place in Yaoundé? The population, we have a cultural and development association. Should they also come in to reconcile whosoever was angry with the chiefs so that the chiefs can finally get back to their palaces?
Well, I think the chiefs going back to their palaces with the current situation on ground seem almost impossible, because the situation down there in the northwest and in the southwest is such a one that if you are not in the same opinion as the separatist fighters, you are not welcome there. So it is not a case of only the chiefs. There have been also civilians who have nothing to do with politics, who have fled those regions and don't have the means to go back there because of insecurity. So the chiefs that are being targeted by this by the separatist fighters, I think that is some level of abomination, because if somebody holds an opinion or somebody holds a position that may be connected to the government of the country, should not make you, he should not become a target to you. So you realize that for me it is quite a difficult campaign for the chiefs to be restored back in their palaces. If these boys, if the separatists fight, we have seen cases, Mr. Leo, you have seen so many cases on ground where common civilian, the fact that you greeted probably a law enforcement officer, you'll be killed by the next day. The fact that you went into a police station, you'll be killed by the next day. So it means that the separatist fighters are colonizing the population of that area to think like them. By the time you want to hold a different opinion, you become a black leg or you become an opposition. So the aspect of chiefs maybe not defending their people, I don't really think that is true. Some of the chiefs did not do that. Like I said earlier, they were supposed to stand for the interest of their people, and many of them did, but yet they fled the area because of insecurity. So there is already a pattern or a regime that says that we don't want chiefs in this place because chiefs are auxiliary. So it's a default principle where does not allow the chiefs to come back. So what I am saying here is that the chiefs should not hurry to go back there when the lives of civilians have not been secured. So first we see how we can call for ceasefire, how these boys can drop down their weapons and then enter into a consensus negotiation that can bring an environment where Cameroonians can live in Cameroon as their own country. So at the end of the day, when you begin to, there are individuals who live in those areas, you become like a foreigner. And that is why I said that if that two regions are left in the hands of these boys, it will be unbearable for any human being to stay there, because the kind of level of authority and power they show does not give room for any civilian to live there. If you live there, you live under the accomplices of those boys. That is how it has been the order of the game. So all I'm saying here is that, well, we have a crisis in the country, true. We should not count on the international community to come and resolve it. I want the Cameroonians to also look in the good side that the government has done. I want the government to also look in the good side that the population of those two regions have also been in this country. So let us find a common grounds, put our differences aside, and come together and build this country, as I still say, because at the end of the day, it is still going to take the youth population and it's still going to take the population of this country to decide their own future and to decide how they want to live in this country. So all this external influence from the Western world that has desecrated our chieftaincy, where chiefs can no longer have right in their own village after we know that they have been put there by certain rituals and sacrifices. But I will also agree with the man on TV that some of them have been dropped, so they are not in their right senses to know what measures to take. So to school those kind of people is impossible. That is why I think that we must take a friendly approach, an approach that looks like we are working together as one people.
Yes. How do we get our chiefs back to the villages? Do you think something is missing with the absence of the fathers?
Yes, Mr. Leo. There's something seriously missing with the absence of our funds from their palaces and our chiefs, because that's where they rightly belong. They were actually crowned chiefs and funds to sit in those palaces in order to handle issues that are happening in the community. And as long as they are not actually occupying that ancestral seat, things go wrong traditionally, and not only traditionally, it naturally affects the people on the ground. So if in case we have to bring back our funds and our chiefs into the village, yes, I think the population of their villages needs to bring that call. They need their funds, they need their chiefs back, because I would not want to accept with a few group of young men who will take over a village and claim that it is theirs. They don't have the authority and audacity to rule over. It is not because you have a gun in your hand that you should send out your father from the house, because he is the only person that can actually give you right counsel on how to go. Like I said earlier, the only problem with most of them is the fact that you see, it is not a problem to be in politics. It is not a problem to be an auxiliary to the government. Auxiliary means you are an assistant. You are helping to do the job. But it is not that you enter into politics and take a particular side. The moment you take a particular side, it means there are people in your village that even you are standing against them in opinion. But as a chief or a fund, you are supposed to be somebody who is neutral. And so at this particular moment, if in case these funds need to come back, these chiefs need to come back into their villages, this is not the Minister of Territorial Administration that will bring them, because I don't think there is any amount of military that will be given to them to protect them when we need military to protect the entire Cameroon. So these individuals in question, these funds, should make a plea to their children back at home to see into it that they get back inside of them to know that they are breaking customary laws which they need to align with. And secondly, there are associations that have been formed which are actually in support of the development of the various communities. I think these associations, it is time for them also to rise up in order to make sure that they bring back their funds and their chiefs into the villages. I might say that I've not seen strong associations like that in my Bakweri area, but when you go to the northwest, such associations are strong, where they even install funds in like for example in Douala here, some of them have leaders that they install in these places which can protect them. So I think there should be a call that to go to those associations in order to bring back these chiefs and funds into the villages.
Dr. Ako, how do we work in Cameroon so that we avoid a repeat of such situations in future, where there is a crisis in the communities and the chiefs are targeted and are forced to leave their children?
Yeah, that meaning we must get closer to the people whom we are ruling. One of the contact points between politicians and the electorate is that most often than not, there should be that link, not a wall between the governed and the subordinates. So most often than not, some of these chiefs pretend, like I said at my first intervention, that they are more of government than they are to represent the people. And that the moment they become chiefs, they decided to work more for the government and looking at the interest, maybe some basic contracts. Others that are senators, others are parliamentarians, others are directorates. So they start protecting their position with the government and the position in which we have given to them at the level of the village. So time again, we will believe equally that the government in Cameroon might dissociate and makes it the holding of a political position being incompetent or not in consonant, incompatible of you becoming a member of any of the traditional positions in the villages. We need to dissociate these two characters. They have their benefits as any other Cameroonians, and no regime will disagree that because you are not with this party or that, your benefits should not be given to you. They are all considered as permanent institutions of the government. If chiefs are looked upon as those who work for the interests of their people, continuous consultation with their people, they live in the village. I mean, I used to love a lot of traditions, I mean in the West. A lot of these chiefs in the West don't live in the city. It is always, we find it more in the Northwest and the Southwest, that those chiefs in the West, a lot of them have what we call representative chiefs in the cities, where if you have a problem concerning the people of Bamoun, they will tell you that the Sultan of Bamoun has his chief in Douala. You consult him here, and the individual here take the issue from Douala back to the village. At any time, at least once a month, this individual is expected to go back to the village to give account about the sons and daughters of his village and how they are faring. If a chief can link up with their people wherever they are within this form, this type of administration, I believe to be very strong and very candid that it will go a long way to solve a lot of this traditional conflict. We are not equally refusing that chiefs too are not human beings. They are human beings, but most often than not, remember, you have a task, and that is set on easy lies the heads that carries the crown. And the people whom you are ruling, they count on you. Some of you, anybody, I mean, even teachers, we have to imagine that a teacher that stands in front of students every day, students are looking upon that teacher as a model. The moment you falter, you find it completely wrong in your class, that you are unable to control a classroom. It is the same thing with the chief. And if a particular chief fails to respect his own people that have brought him up or installed him, that traditional stool becomes sacred, because every individual has surrendered and sacrificed his own personal liberty in that village for the sake of the chief. That is the power. The moment you don't function according to the rules of that particular traditional tool, I'm telling you that it creates a lot of conflict, and at times people even doubt if the gods of the village are active. Because if the gods of the village are active, which are the witches of each and every individual, you will realize that so many chiefs, before something wrong goes on with the village, you will always be informed. And somebody, one or two, all the villagers are your watchdog. All of them are your guidance. One person will tell you that this is not going right, and there is a need for us to give a response to. This is how I believe very strongly that with the coming of the House of Chiefs, chiefs should learn that they have been sent to the House of Chiefs to present the worries of their people and not their own personal, egoistic, selfish, egocentric tendencies. We need to do a lot for the name of the people and for the people of Cameroon. I remember sometime it is said that every nation never started as a nation, but the unity of that nation always comes up from a particular village, and a chief is a leader of a cluster, a host of families. So if the villages are well governed, then the moral decadence, the fall in moral rectitude of Cameroon today might have been managed long before the cities. So the more better the administrative institution of the village, within the leadership of certain chiefs, and even to the basic unit of the quarter heads, the better the nation Cameroon.
Tilarus Atia, some persons are not too clear about the chiefs not working in the interest of the people in the context of what is happening in the southwest and northwest region. What is the interest of the people that the chiefs have not worked for?
Well, all those who are saying this are simply not very objective in their arguments. I want to ask Dr. Ako, for example, if he has ever given £1 franc contribution for the upkeep of the chief of his village or the fund of his village. If he has ever made contributions, if he has ever sent his children to go and work on the farm of the fund to ensure the fund can feed his large family and his wives. He has not done that because the things that obtained in the past no longer obtained today. In the past, the scholarization was low. Chiefs had many children. They were not going to school. They just had to work on the farms. The population also went to the chief's farm to work on his farms to ensure that he can have money to feed his children and feed his wives. But it is not the case today. So because the population no longer contributes food to feed the funds have to work. We have funds who are working, who earn salaries, who do business, because they have to take care of the large families that they inherited from their fathers. And that is what is happening. So because they work in the civil service, some of them work in the civil service, some of them are contractors, they are businessmen, and they are doing business with the state. Aside being auxiliaries of administration, they are civil servants, they are appointed by government, they take contracts from government and they work. And the population thinks that because these people are working in the civil service, they are blacklegs, or they are supporting the regime in place to oppress them, which is not the case. Because some of these people, before they became funds, they had their lives they were living. Some of them were teachers, some of them were magistrates, they were judges, they were lawyers and all of that. You don't expect Senator for Tabetando, for example, to abandon his job as a businessman or as a lawyer to go back and stay in the village 24/7. It's not possible. If he stays in the village 24/7, the villagers are no longer able to feed them. And even in the case where the elite are most often people who are well-to-do in the villages, that they want to go back to the palace to help the fund feed his children and feed himself, when the elite go to the palace to give to the fund, these elite are oftentimes members of the CPA, of the ruling class. And so the population thinks that they have come to give bribe to the fund. They don't see it as the contribution of every villager towards the upkeep of the fund. So until we go back to the olden day institution of the chieftaincy, where the chief's upkeep was ensured by the population, we are going to continue saying that they are blacklegs, they are sellers, and all of that. So we have to go back. The funds did their part. They did their part as civilians. They are civilians like you and me. They are members of the population like you and me. And they also feel the pinch of the crisis. And they have come out, they have made statements, they have called on government to take certain actions. And government has listened to them sometimes. Government has not listened some of the times. And we are even happy that some of the chiefs and the firms are members of government. The Prime Minister, for example, is a traditional ruler. And before being traditional ruler, he was a diplomat. So you don't expect him being a diplomat and he has risen to this level in his career. Because he becomes firm, he should go back to the village and abandon everything. We should be able to benefit, to catch in on some of these chiefs who have attained certain positions and lobby them to have things for the village, to see how they can develop the village, how they can improve on the livelihoods of the population. So I think the chiefs, they have done their best and they have to continue pressing for more. They have to continue pressing on Yaoundé, even if it means going through political parties, going through pressure groups and all of that. The chiefs have to come together and press for more demands. And we don't expect the chiefs to want Cameroon to divide, because most of them are chiefs because of Cameroon exists. They are chiefs of the Republic of Cameroon. So if you want to play the Republic of Ambazonia and you want chiefs, traditional rulers who are auxiliaries of the Cameroon administration to support you in your movement, I think that we are mistaken. We have had chiefs who have come out. Von Mukete came out and said federalism is the way to go. We've had so many other traditional rulers who have come out to talk about federalism and all of that. Yeah, they are petitions. They are presented the demands of a segment of the population. There are people in the population who think that federalism is good. And if the fund supports this agenda and they attend blacklegs, I think it's unfortunate. And it goes back to the point that those who have taken up arms, those who are separatists, they are handlers in the diaspora and all of that, should be able to respect the opinions of everybody. If somebody says they want federalism, stay with your secession and allow them to push their own political agenda. We should be in a democracy. Anglophones are known for their democratic nature. Anglophones knew democracy even before 1961, when they got independence by joining the then La République du Cameroun.
Okay, Tilaris, we want to say we are very grateful for your participation in this program today.
Thank you very much, Leo. And I want to say that the state has the duty to provide security. The head of state should assume his responsibilities and ensure that peace returns to Cameroon. Because the Constitution says, Article 8 sub 3, that the head of state shall ensure security internally and externally. So if there's a problem, the head of state should assume his responsibilities and stop laying blames on Minister A, Minister B, or Chief this and Chief that. The head of state should have our attention. He should be the one we should blame for things not going right or not going wrong, because he defines the policy of the country.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Andrew, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Liu. And I also finally want to say that it is the responsibility of the head of state to ensure peace in his country. As difficult as it is, but we must forge our way to see that peace return back to our nation, so that we don't allow doors to be open to Western influences that will come here and keep us divided. So this is a time where I think that looking at the historic background to where we are, it is a need that Cameroonians should come together and looking forward to seeing that this continent has suffered for ever since the transatlantic slavery. So we must find means where we should keep looking of building an African continent as one people. Okay. Not as a divided people.
Okay, Professor, thank you too for coming.
Thank you, Leo. It's always my pleasure to be on this particular platform, and I want to say good evening and good night to all of you watching at us at this particular moment. And as it is the call, we believe that the knife and the yam is in the hands of the President of the Republic to stop this particular problem that is happening, because sincerely he is the one who called for it. So I think he should stop it before it's late.
Thank you, Doctor, for coming.
Yeah, it's a pleasure that at least the ideas we have shared here. But one thing I'm happy equally with Atia and Andrin is that they had calling the head of state to take his position to maintain peace and order, and not necessarily the use of arms, because Cameroonians are peace-loving people. We have enjoyed that peace, and we believe that the absence of arms will make us better. Cameroonians should talk to one another and stop believing that military force can bring a long-lasting solution. It will tear us apart and may even regenerate and create other nations. We have seen that.
Thank you, Desmond. Thank you, Eli. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everybody who has worked for the success of this edition of the program. Thank you, Tabi Bryant, and we say stay blessed. Bye-bye.